All right, guys, this is the recording for Metabolism Lesson 2.4. We are going to use a simulation to compare the healthy human body with a human body with the condition that you became an expert on. And so the first thing that we did was a warm-up that was in Canvas. And when this warm-up loads, you're going to see that there is an image, and it was created by an intern at a hospital, but there's some things wrong with this image. There are some molecules where they do not belong. And so you needed to find at least two things that were wrong, at least two molecules in a spot they don't belong. And I can see one off the top right away. And so remember, on these warm-ups, you're going to have to click that red submit button first, and then one of those text boxes will pop up that you can respond in, and you should find at least two things wrong. There's definitely more than two. And so after that, the next thing that I had the class do was I had them copy in a couple new Cornell notes, and these were the Cornell notes that are in green. And these will help us with the simulation today in filling out parts of the notebook. And so there it is. And so you can kind of pause this video and get this information. And so these three notes that I added in were based on those four conditions that we were looking at. So anemia, asthma, diabetes, and injury to the pancreas. And so we learned that those were conditions that led to the cells not getting the molecules that they need to function properly. And then we learned a little more specific things about them. So the first thing we learned, so anemia and asthma affect oxygen. Diabetes affects glucose. Injury to the pancreas affects glucose and amino acids. And then as far as which body systems those each affect, so diabetes affects our circulatory, and then asthma affects circulatory and respiratory, and then injury to the pancreas affects the digestive system, and anemia is circulatory and respiratory. And so those pieces of information are going to really help you today with what you are doing. So you can pause and get those in there. The next thing that you're going to see on our agenda is we are doing a few slides in the notebook using the simulation. And so I know that if you were in first hour, the simulation was being a pain and would not load. My sixth hour, we got it to load for some of us, and then some of us it was glitchy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to run those tests for you on here, so that way if you were unable to get your simulation loaded, or you had glitches or technical difficulties of any sort, you can use the information I'm about to show you to do your notebook. So I will run the healthy body test, which is going to be something that all of you are going to use because you all did that. But then I'm going to have to run each disease separate. So I'm going to have to do the anemia one, the asthma one, and so on. And so if that was not the condition you studied, you're going to kind of have to fast forward. Or if you just want to hear my voice, you can just watch it all, But I will run those tests right now. All right, so here is the simulation. And so the first test that we're going to run are the healthy body tests. So you're going to click load healthy body, and we are going to test. We are going to feed the healthy body a certain diet, which is in your notebook. We're going to give them 2 corn, 2 fish, and give another fish, and then 2 sandwiches. We want their activity level to be walk, and we're going to play it. I'm going to speed it up just to make it go faster, and you're pretty much just going to let it run until the timer runs out, which is about 200. You can watch it on this view, but what the view is that we're actually going to want is the graph view, because in the notebook we're filling in the data that is down here. So our total molecules absorbed, we're looking at our glucose, amino acids, and oxygen. And so these are the numbers, these 4 numbers right here. These are the ones that we are going to end up entering, which I will show you in a second. So I'm going to kind of let this run all the way through. And we are going to do 2 trials because in science, it's important to always make sure you do it more than once to make sure that you have accurate results. So I'm going to let this run through. Okay, so I ran my test all the way through. I paused my recording so you wouldn't have to sit through all that. And you can see its timer's at 2:01 and it says that this test has concluded. And so I'm going to go to my graph view and I see my numbers over here. So I see that there is 51 glucose, 57 amino acids, and 250 oxygen. So I'm going to go to my notebook and on slide 22, I'm going to enter that data. And I guess I probably should have told you this before, but what we did in class together before we even started with the simulations was we made some predictions. And so here at the top, you needed to, and it's okay to do it now because we really haven't done much, you were going to put what your condition was and then what molecule was affected by your condition, which is why I gave you those Cornell notes that kind of gave you those answers. And then what you expect to see in this simulation. And kind of the whole point of what we're doing is we're comparing the healthy body to the body of someone that has your condition. So we're kind of looking at how they function differently and how that condition affects your body. And that's why we're running these healthy body tests first, so we can see what the numbers should be and then look at the numbers of your condition. And so I can put my numbers here. And so it was 51 glucose and then 57 amino acid and 250 oxygen. And then my oxygen molecules taken per breath was 25. And so I fill in those, and then I'm going to have to do that same thing for one more trial. And so I'm going to go back to my simulation. I'm going to reset it. I'm going to reset all of my settings and start over. I'm going to test my healthy human body. I'm going to feed it 2 corn, 2 fish, 2 sandwiches. I'm going to click out so we can see everything. It's at walk. I'm going to make my speed go up so it goes quicker. I'm going to play it. I'm going to let it run all the way through again, and then when it's done, I will click on my results. All right, this test has concluded, and so now I'm going to look at my results again. So this is my second trial, and I'm going to use these numbers. So 58 glucose, and then I had 72 amino acids, and then I had 240 oxygen, and then I had 25 oxygen taken in each breath again. And so looking at these 2 numbers, I can see I have very similar numbers. My amino acids were a little higher the second time, but everything's about the same. So that can tell me that I have accurate data since both trials produced very similar numbers. Now is when I need to scroll down and go to the next slide. And on this next slide, I need to run my different conditions. And so this was the part where I was telling you that you're going to have to kind of go and skip through. So the first condition I'm going to show is going to be asthma. And so I'm going to go and reset my simulation. I'm going to click start over. And so I'm going to click test, but I'm going to have to change my mode altogether over here. And you can see things are still going slower than slow. And so up here in the left-hand corner, I'm going to start, well, actually, yeah, I'll start with asthma since I already said I was going to do that. So begin asthma levels, yes, you're going to test. And you're going to run the same exact test that you did for the healthy body. So you're going to feed them the 2 corn, the 2 fish, and the 2 sandwiches. And you're going to have them walk, and you're going to run it, and you're going to run it through. And so this is a person who has asthma. And so I'm going to let that speed through, and then we'll look at the results. All right, so this is the first test of asthma that is already completed. And going to my results, I see that I have interesting numbers. So I have 48 glucose, 55 amino acid, and 161 oxygen. And looking at my trials, I needed to do 2, but since I have to run every condition, I'm probably only going to do 1. And so these are your numbers if you were in the asthma group. So 48 glucose, 55 amino acids, 161 oxygen, and 12 molecules taken in for each breath. So the next test that I'm going to run is the anemia test. So over here, I'm clicking anemia in my options, and I'm going to click test. And I'm going to set it up the same way that I've set up my other tests. So I'm going to feed 2 corn, 2 fish, 2 sandwiches. Oh, one of my fish didn't go. There we go. And then I'm going to have it at walk. I'm going to make my speed go up, and I'm going to run it, and we will see what our data shows. All right, so now the anemia tests have run, and we're going to look at our graph, and we are going to see that we have 44 glucose, 65 amino acid, 140 oxygen, and 25 molecules of oxygen taken in. So this is your data for anemia. And you can see I've already said this, but I'm only running 1 trial. Hopefully your simulation works on your own. If it doesn't, we're just going to go with 1 trial because it would take me a century to do 2 trials for each condition, which is why we split you up into groups in the first place, because it would be a lot to do each one. So here are your anemia numbers. The next test that I'm going to run is going to be diabetes. And so I'm going to click diabetes, and I'm going to set this one up the same. I'm going to feed it the 2 of each. So my 2 corn, my 2 fish, and my 2 sandwiches, and then set at walk. I'm going to make my speed go fast, and I'm going to run it, and then I will look at my data. So this is diabetes. All right, so our diabetes test is done, and so I'm going to, hopefully not make, let me see what I just did. So the last one glitched. I don't know what happened, but this was the end results of the diabetes test. And so with our diabetes, our results were 18 glucose, 74 amino acid, 216 oxygen, and 25 molecules. So if you were in the diabetes group, this is your numbers. And my last test I'm now going to run is injury to the pancreas. So I'm going to click injury to the pancreas here and do this one and run the test. And I'm going to set it up, like I said, the same way we've set up every one. So that's what we do in science. We run the same test and just change one thing each time so we can make sure that is what we're measuring. And so I'm going to add 2 corn, 2 fish, and 2 sandwiches. It is still set at walking. And so I'm going to speed it up. And so this is going to be injury to the pancreas. And set it and let it run. So that is the end of the injury to the pancreas test. And I'm going to look at the data. So we have 28 glucose, 23 amino acids, and 228 oxygen. and then our 25 oxygen molecules. And so that is the pancreas. Okay, so now that all of our tests are run, I made a little chart here to kind of compare, because the next part of the assignment is at the bottom of slide 23 here. You can see that after you did your tests on your certain condition, you are comparing your results. So you're comparing that healthy body and the data that you got from the healthy body to the results of your condition. And so I made this little chart because kind of had to go through that quick. So these are the numbers for all 4 conditions, and this is compared to one trial of the healthy body. 58, and then asthma and anemia are close. Injury to the pancreas is pretty low, and diabetes is even lower at 18. So we know that glucose is affected in this injury. And then we have 72 in a healthy body for amino acids, and we see the injury to the pancreas is super low. Diabetes is close, but it looks like asthma and the injury to the pancreas are affected. And then our healthy body has 240 oxygen, and we can see all of these are affected, especially anemia and asthma. And then obviously oxygen taken in per breath is highly affected in asthma, and the others are all the same number. So you can use this data here to answer your questions here about what you saw and if that was close to what you predicted, yes or no. The other thing that we did, which I assigned pretty much both classes as homework because we didn't get to it in class, was you are going to create one sentence, and it only needs to be one, to answer each one of these questions. And it's a great review. And you have this word bank up here, so it shouldn't take you very long, but this is kind of going through each of our molecules, our oxygen, our glucose, and you can see that chart there that I showed you can help you answer those questions as well. And this is something we'll go over in class on Friday too. And then your homework was this, and you are revising this inaccurate model, very similar to warm-up. Something is wrong with this. So you need to figure out what's wrong with it and explain what you would change about it. And then that is it for today's lesson.